So you want to build yourself a PC, but yet you don't have the courage to quite pull the trigger because you're not sure if you can do it. After watching this video, I hope you have enough courage and confidence to actually just pull the trigger and build yourself your own PC. Create a PC in particular, because that's what we're doing in this video. Now you might be thinking, is it worth just to go and buy yourself a pre-built PC? And I don't think this is a good option. I think it's still better to build your own PC because you can choose better quality parts, plan your build for the future, and not have any parts in there that are just like kind of add-ons that are rubbish, look good on the spec sheet, but actually don't give you any performance and are actually very low quality products. For the same price point, you can build this awesome PC over here, which is around $1,500. Everything that I'm talking about, I'll leave the links in the description below. And I've made a separate video on the channel as well. Feel free to check that out, because in there I'm really gonna go in depth why I think this is the best bang for buck for 2022 for video editors especially, but other creators as well who want to build a PC for their workflow. But if you compare the same price point with a pre-built PC, you can see that you can't really find a pre-built PC that is as good or uses as good quality parts. You often, like the GPU and CPU are the main quality parts, but the rest of the things are just very value on very low end and often bottlenecks in the system, especially if you're a creator. So that's why I think building your own PC is still better. Even with the scalper prices, it's still better to build your own. By the time you're seeing this video, there's actually a live stream available of the software configuration of this build. So once this PC has been built, I'm gonna go and make a live stream, which is already out there, like kind of time, scale is all over the place over here. But the point is that once you see the PC built, you can also have the confidence that following the live stream, you can see how to install Windows, install the drivers, configure the BIOS, and actually make the PC all the way ready for your work, so you have all the tools available. So it's all complete for you to just start using it. So feel free to go check that out first. Another thing I want to mention is that all the parts I'm talking about are linked in the description below. If you're just not sure if all the parts are compatible with each other or which part to use, you can just go and check them out in the description below, and knowing that if you buy any of those, they will all link together. I might leave a few options for you as well, because the good thing about building your own PC is you can choose a few color themes, parts that you like more or like the look more or like the specs more. So I'll leave those in the description as well. Let's start the build.
Licensing Windows has never been easier and cheaper. Go to whokeys.com, search for Windows 10 Pro license, or click on the link in the video description below. Purchase the license and use the code TN20 to get a 20% discount. Paste the key into the activation settings and you're all done. By the way, this license also works for Windows 11 when upgraded from licensed Windows 10. Check out whokeys.com in the video description below.
So we're gonna start with the motherboard, because that's gonna be the guy who's gonna be in the middle of it all and putting it all together. This is the Gigabyte Aero G DDR4 Z690 motherboard. Underneath there is a Wi-Fi antenna. Get that one out as well. Then there's instruction manuals. Always revert to instruction manuals. Just read this and you'll be even more confident than you know what you're doing, because that shows you everything how to build a PC. And then there's like a few packets of these tiny little screws inside. Get those out as well, because you're gonna need that. Then close the box, and then we're going to put the motherboard on top of the box. It's not really recommended to touch all those little different parts and capacitors and things behind the motherboard if you have greasy fingers. By the way, go wash your hands before making this build. Make sure that you don't have any finger grease on, because that's gonna not be good on any of those builds. Have clean hands when you're doing this. Put your fingers on the back plate of this motherboard over here, like this metal thing, so you can really like hold over there. And then on the other side, you have a thumb here on the heatsink, and then you can just pull it out without really touching anything. And then lay the motherboard down with this I/O hanging slightly over the edge of this side of the motherboard, because that's a little bit longer. If you put it on top, there's like a little gap, and when you install stuff in there, you might put unequal pressure on the motherboard. But if this is hanging over, the motherboard is just all like nicely laid flat on the box. So we're gonna start with the CPU, and this is the socket over here, and this is where the CPU is gonna go. There's this latch or handle over here. Just push this down and move it on the side, and then this like comes up, and then now your CPU socket is open. You can just pull this on the side, and voila, that's the socket for this CPU. It's the LGA 1700 socket, and there's lots of pins. Make sure you don't touch the bins, drop anything in there, because one of those pins bends, that's it, your motherboard is pretty much done for. So, you know, make sure you're not gonna touch that. So be very, very careful with that. So might as well just leave it closed like this, but open, so you know that if you drop anything there, it's still gonna protect it. Then take out your CPU. In our case, we're using the 12600K. Very, very interesting CPU, very powerful. I think the best CPU for 95% of the people. If you want to know more in depth like review, I've got a review on that on my channel, how good this is in performance for all the creators. So go check that out, and then you'll know flipping heck, this is an amazing CPU. Then open this socket over here, and the way the CPU goes in there is basically there's a little arrow on the one of the sides of the CPU over here. You can see in this corner there's a little arrow, and that arrow needs to go on this bottom left corner. If this is the top of the motherboard, then it's the bottom left of the corner. You basically just take hold of the CPU with two sides, like fingers on both sides over here, and then the CPU comes out like that. Just lower it in there, and that's it. And the CPU just literally slots in there, and then you don't need to worry about anything else. Just make sure that like these little holes on your CPU sides like line up with these notches on that side as well, so the CPU like goes in there. So you can give it a little wiggle, you know, it's definitely in there. And then now this needs to go on top there, but it doesn't really work so well. So I recommend now at this point, just take this cover off. There's like these black little nibs. They just put a little bit of pressure, it literally just pops off like that, and this is just the cover on top of this. So take this one off and then push your CPU that one down, and then now we literally close the socket like that. You might need to put a little bit of pressure in there, don't you worry, this is all good, like that. And then there we go, it goes underneath that little hook over there, and then now the CPU is socketed, CPU is installed, boom. Wasn't too hard, was it? Next off, we're gonna install the RAM over here, and I am using this Gigabyte Designaire memory, which fits really well with this motherboard theme. This might be a little bit hard to find. It's a little bit of a rare model of RAM over here. I'm gonna leave a separate, different model of RAM with the same specs in the description below. That's also cheaper if you wanna use that with a similar color theme, so you can use them in here and they work exactly the same. Because there's 4 sockets over here, you need to install them in the right sockets. There's a little guideline on the side of the motherboard over here as well. It says like first which ones to install first, but to just show you, it's this slot over here that's the furthest my way over here on this side, and then the other one in the middle over here. So just open those slots on the side like that, then line up this notch over here. The notch between the RAM sticks over here will line up with the notch on the motherboard over there. The other way is just way off, so you can't like put it really wrong, it doesn't go in. You just line it up, put it inside over there, and then just put quite a lot of pressure with your thumbs on both sides of the RAM like that, and then just press down, and then you hear a click. On both sides, these will go up, boom, and the RAM is installed. Then take your second stick, exactly the same. Boom, RAM is installed. See, it's not too hard, is it? Next, we're going to move on to our SSDs, and I highly recommend you use an M.2 SSD over here, not SATA SSDs, because the M.2s these days are very, very affordable. So if you're wondering like which M.2 to use, I highly recommend you go check out my review or guide for the creators for SSDs, because then you'll know which SSD to go for. And also check out the video that I made about this, like which parts to go for this build, and then why I would go for this, because there's like all the budget options over there. Now the SSD I'm using over here is not quite in the budget, it's a little bit higher end piece budget, but did you see I just unscrewed this over here, and then the heatsink comes off, and then you can put it on the side over here. The SSD will be mounted underneath here. The one that I'm using is this Silicon Power US70 M.2 SSD. This is PCIe 4.0 speeds, and it's 2 terabytes in size. Now you can use any one you want and go much more budget if your budget, you know, is very, very tight. There isn't that big of a difference, but I want to just feature and show that this motherboard can feature 4 M.2s with PCIe 4.0 capability and run them all at full fat, all like speeds. So that's why we're using this on the top over here. You've got like a little standoff over here, and now those little screws in the packets, that's where you need to use them. So take the screw out. I've actually already taken it out, and it's already screwed in here because I've used this motherboard before, so just I wouldn't lose the screws. I screwed it in there, but it basically looks like this, that there's no screw in there. Take your NVMe M.2 SSD out, just like that, and it's just gonna line up with this slot over here. So you turn it around, hold it from the sides, and then just pop it in like that. There's like a little place where it's gonna go. Okay, you line it up and then put some pressure this way, and it's just gonna pop into the socket. It's gonna keep sticking up like that. It's completely fine. And then you just put some pressure down, then push it down, and then it lines up with this screw hole over here. Then you can just use your little screw and then tighten this SSD down, and that's gonna hold the SSD in place. That's the SSD installed. Now we just have to put the heatsink back. Now, when you look at the heatsink, there is actually a little sticker on top of this. It's blue. I'll show you this on the other heatsink over here, because we're gonna be installing secondary SSD as well. But you'll see that the heatsink will have like a little peel that you need to peel off, because then it's really gonna get the contact with the SSD, and it's going to cool the SSD down and have a good contact. So as you can see on the other side of this heatsink, there's these little ribbons, and then you just like pull this off like a little sticker, which I have already done on the top one over here. So then you just like put it down. There's like a little latch, it just goes in there. You push it in there and then line up with the screw hole. Make sure that the latch on this side goes underneath there, so it's not just sitting on the top, because you want to put like quite good pressure on the SSD, and then just tighten it down, and voila. Next up, for the secondary SSD, I am using a PCIe 3.0 speed drive actually, which is a little bit more affordable, something that I had like spare here at the moment. And I'm going to install this on the second slot over here. As you can see, there's another 3 slots underneath this bigger cover over here. I'm going to be installing this over here, and this is going to be installed exactly the same way as the other ones. You're just going to line it up, press it in, and push it down, and then screw it in. If you're wondering which screwdrivers I'm using over here, I highly recommend you check out this iFixit kit. There's like a smaller kit available as well if you do like a lot of electricity things, or like a little computer things you want building. There's like fake ones available as well that are much cheaper, but basically there's lots of different heads because you might need like something very, very small. So this is like Phillips 1, or even smaller than Phillips 1 actually, I think, to get these screws off. Pull this top, because you know this is the top cover over here. It goes in this way. So we need to pull, yeah, this one over here, and then just put the heatsink back. Okay, line it up with the screw holes on this side. Make sure that the screw holes go in. I'm going to screw this side in first. Yep. Now, if you want to add more SSDs, you can do them now or do them later. The only thing I want to mention is that if you plan to use same size drives, for example, 1 terabyte for the OS system and 1 terabyte for the project drives or something like that, then I recommend you only install the OS drive at first before you like turn the PC on, because once we install Windows, it might be a little bit confusing to understand which of these M.2s is plugged in where, and we want to install the Windows on this top SSD, because that is connected to the CPU rather than going through the chipset to the CPU, which has a little bit more latency. So that would be the optimal over here. Next up is the cooler, and for the cooler we are using this Arctic Freezer 34 Esports Duo, and there's a few different colors available for this one, so you can choose whichever color you like or whichever is most affordable. I am using this like white and gray one, because I think that will fit like right with this theme build. Make sure this comes with the LGA 1700 upgrade kit as well, so you can actually mount this with this socket, because this is a new socket or new kind of platform. So when you open this, there is this is the back plate that we need. This black kit is the LGA 1700. Yeah, the white that put on the side, so we need this black kit because that's gonna go behind that over there. And then take the cooler out over here. Okay, and then underneath the cooler there are these papers, which are actually very, very important, and these are the instruction manuals. The instruction manual is the one with the QR code. So what you want to do is just scan the QR code over here, so you'll get the instruction manuals up. You choose the top choice over here, Intel socket 1700. So now we're going to take these off over here, these fans. So these clips over here, they just come pop off, and then these clips go on the side like that. Once you got the fans out, it might be connected with a wire, so undo the wire so you can actually pull this out, and take this cardboard box out as well, put that on the side, so we have the wire over here, and then this is just the tower. And then what we need to do is get this packet out that has this Freezer 34 LGA 1700 upgrade kit. It's white. We need those 2 white kind of brackets or sides like that, and then we need 2 screws as well. The 2 screws are actually inside the other packet over here. They're like these silver screws. You can see there's only 2 in the other box. They're like silver gray screws like that, small screws. And then you're gonna have to put those on the side over here. And basically they need to angle outwards. They will look like that. Just follow this angle. From the top angle you can see which way they are installed. Next up, take this black plate out from this LGA 1700 marking place. You can kind of actually take all of these things out because you need everything from there from now. But there's like these 4 kind of screws like that, and they will go on the outside of this bracket. It's like this corners, they have like kind of 2 holes, but you want to use the very outside ones over here. They'll only go in like one side, and then you use one of those tiny little black rubber things, and then you just put that on top of this. So that's going to basically keep the screw in, so it's not going to be falling out from the socket over there. Boom, there we go, just like that. And then you do the same with all the other corners. Okay, before we're going to put this back bracket on the motherboard, there's like this little tiny sticker thing that has 4 little sticker washers on. So take these sticker washers off, and then these will go on top of the motherboard around the hole over there. So just line them up with the hole, there we go, and then just put these washers down. Once those washers are down, take this back bracket on this plate over there. They're gonna line up with these 4 holes over there. There's like little arrows. The arrows will point up and down kind of on the motherboard. Then it lines up perfectly. And then keep hold of this on this side. So like the screw holes will line up, and take one of the screws that was inside the box as well. And then just screw one in over there, this standoff over there, because then that's gonna just hold it onto your motherboard. And then I'm gonna screw on another one in the other diagonal corner as well. And then now I can lie it down because I know that the back bracket won't fall off. And then now we'll just add the rest of them. And then once they're all like kind of in, just hand tighten all of them so that they're nicely tight. Don't need to over tighten them, but if you can't tighten them anymore with your finger, it is tight enough. It just holds it all nicely intact. That's perfect. Now the cool thing is that this cooler can be mounted like in every single orientation, but how we want to install this is so that the Arctic logo is like the right way, you know, facing this way. You can see the Arctic logo on the top, and then the airflow will come from this side of the case, boom, boom, around here. And now we need to put thermal paste on the CPU. So you can see a little tube, like a little syringe, looks like that. Take that one out. As well as inside the case, you have these mounting screws as well. There's 4 of these like little heads, tiny little gray ones. So take those out. And then now let's apply the thermal paste. So basically, you take the cap off and then start putting the thermal paste on. You need like a pea size in the middle, but because it's a rectangular, I'm gonna do like a little line over here. Okay, there we go. That is plenty over there. That's quite a lot, as you can see what I've put on there. But the thing over here is it's rather apply more than little. Don't be skinting over here with the thermal paste, because you want the thermal paste to go between all the little cracks of the imperfections between the cooler and the CPU, so that all the heat can just be, you know, transferred from the CPU to the cooler. Very important point now. You can see that the cooler has a sticker. Make sure you peel this off before installation. Double check the orientation of the cooler over here. The CPU is going to go into the holes that are like kind of long diagonal 3 holes all cut together over here, and it's going to go in the middle of those. So make sure it's all in, and then press it down all on the motherboard. Now make sure that you're not going to tilt it or move this now, because we want to put equal pressure between the CPU and the cooler so that the thermal paste gets squeezed down nicely like that, not like this way or like the other way, because then it's just going to squeeze it out from the side. But we just want to be like flattening it perfectly equally. So now take those little standoffs and then screw them off like diagonally to this corner and that corner, just very gently until you reach like the end of the bracket. And then now with your screwdriver, start going with like a star shape diagonally. 2 rounds like there, and then bottom corner, top and bottom. just start doing it diagonally, because we want to put like equal pressure on, not like one side, the other side, because then it's going to go bad. What we're going to do is a little bit there, a little bit there, a little bit here, a little bit here, and then go all the way around until it's all gone down. You know, don't over tighten them. As long as they're like pretty tight, that's fine. Now I just want to mention that on this motherboard, this like end side of the bracket is very close to this heatsink, this VRM heatsink over here. It does go in there, but it's against it. So just like kind of put it down gently. It will go in, don't worry about it. It's just very, very tight. Like as you can see, these over here are touching. Okay. Now we're going to take our fans and then we're going to install them again. In terms of the fan orientation, there is like a little arrow on this side of the fan. As you can see which way the airflow is. So I want to make sure that these are installed the correct way. So the airflow comes from the RAM side over here and then out from this side. If you follow this video, you'll know which way I mean. Okay. And then on the other side, the fan has to like face exactly the same way as the other one. Just make sure that the direction is both of them the same way, so you're not like pushing the air in from both sides. That will be pretty bad. So we're going to put the other side in as well. Okay, now there's two cables that come from both of the fans. You can connect them together. So basically let's take the front fan over here that the cables come in, and then you connect this female plug to the male plug off the back, the one that doesn't have pins but has holes. You connect these together and then leave the other side just like dangling somewhere underneath the cooler. And then the other side of this, we're just going to plug in the other female plug. Is going to go into this CPU fan header that's on the top over here. It's like a gray header. It says CPU fan on the top. Just line it up nicely and then plug it in. And then feel free to do the cable management however you want. Just like try to hide it underneath the cable so it looks nice and tidy. So now the cooler is installed. Let's move it on the side. Clean up your mess and put all the parts that you used for the like same parts all in the same box. So later on when you need something or you need to change something, you know that they're all like in the same box. Now we're going to move on to the case. Make some room, put the motherboard nicely on the side, make sure it's nice and safe, and then pull the case out. So this is the case. There was instruction manuals as well, so take them out, you might need them as well. But we have chosen the Corsair 4000D Airflow. There is a non-airflow version of this as well that has like solid glass tempered panels on the front over here as well. You can go with that one. It's slightly cheaper if your budget allows, maybe slightly worse airflow. So if you can, go with this version, but there isn't that big of a difference in terms of performance between the two models. And if you're not using RGB fans, there's no reason really to put a see-through panel on the front. So you might want to opt for the like solid panel version. There's also a black version of this available, so you can pick whichever one you want, and a different RGB versions. I'm going to leave the link in the description below. You can click through. The price varies. I think this is like the best bang for buck option in the middle ground. You get a lot of airflow and it doesn't cost a lot. At the same time, it's a very high quality case from Corsair, so all your components are going to be really, really nice inside. But I do want to underline this, that you can save a few dollars by going with the tempered glass version on the front if you wanted to. In order to put everything inside the case, we're gonna take off all the panels. So the front, on top and side panels, they all need to come off. If you don't know how to take the panels off, the instruction manuals will show you. So this case already comes with two included fans, one in the front and one in the back, like kind of pushing the airflow through the case like that. But we have some replacement fans. If you have a little bit of a flexible budget to kind of add a little bit of a bling to your build, because I want to make it all white. These are from Arctic, and they are probably the most budget fans for RGB fans, and Arctic fans are actually very good quality when it comes to airflow, so they're not just a bling, they actually work really well as well. And Arctic, in terms of general, whatever you buy from Arctic is like the best bang for buck, performance and price wise, very, very affordable. I'm going to leave them linked below. The model for this is P12 PWM PSD ARGB 0DB. They're quite new. So inside the box we have 3 fans, What we want to do is replace those 3 fans in the front over here, and then we have another 3 fans. We're going to put them here, like 2 on the top and then 1 in the back. So we have like 6 altogether. 3, 4, 5, 6. So first of all, take off the included fans if you're going to go in with my way. If you leave the included fans, you can just use these connectors over here to connect them to the motherboard. You'll see which motherboard connectors we're going to plug them into once I have installed my new fans, but they're the same connector, but you can just use all of these cables already. Just make the cable management nice, somewhere on the sides, make sure that the fans go on the side. So just take those fans off. So what we're going to do is start from the top. Make sure that your cables are kind of coming out from the top or from this side, so that we can later put the cables through like from this side and pull them out from that side. So my cables are coming from the top and from the side. And then what you do is make sure that the Arctic logo is this way, so you're not putting the fans the wrong way and the orientation goes actually this way. And then just line up the fan kind of with these circle holes that you have over here, so you know that your fan is kind of laid out nicely, and then you know all the other ones are going to go in as well. Take the silver screws that were inside the fan headers and then just use those screws to screw them in for screws over there. Another tip over here is don't screw them 100% in, just screw them in so that you can still move the fans a little bit, just in case you need to move them all nice into position, because it will be really hard if you screw them in and then you have to do all like 16 or 12 screws to move them again. I want to show you that this front panel cover over here comes off. There's like a little latch underneath on this side. When you pull this off, it comes off, so it's a little bit easier to install your fans. The front fans have been installed and all the cables. By the way, there's like holes on this side of the case over there. So the top fan cables come out from the top hole, and the middle one middle hole, and then on the bottom one comes out from the bottom over there like that. Now before we move on to the top fans over there, I want to do a little bit of cable management so this will like make sense. Each fan has 2 cables coming off of it, the RGB connector and then the fan controller. And that's another good thing about these fans, is that you can daisy chain them together. I want to make sure that all the front panel kind of intake works as one kind of header, and then all the outtake from the other side of the case works as the second one, because I want the intake to work a little bit faster than the outtake. That means that I've got a little bit of a positive pressure inside the case, which keeps the case cleaner and has better cooling. Now I'm going to take the top fan over there and make my way down so that, you know, this is kind of the last one on the chain, and then this over here is the first one, the bottom. Take the top fan cables over here. We'll do the fan cables first. Fan cables are like these 4 pins, like female and male plugs. So they look like that. So you take this one and then you plug it into the same cable on the secondary fan, and then you plug the male, that's this one over here, to the female, because then that's the way the signal flows. It goes from there to here. Now take the secondary plug over here and then find the same on the third plug, or like the third fan, the bottom fan, and then plug the male into the bottom fan. Now this cable over here is basically the cable that controls all of these things there together. Also on the bottom of this case over there, there is some case accessories that we seriously need. So take that box out as well. You have 2 hard drive options that you can put in over there. In our case, we don't have any hardware accessories, so we're gonna move the whole tray all together. So we're gonna open this on the bottom over there, and then this box comes nice and easily out. Then we're gonna do the RGB connectors exactly the same way. So from the top over there, there's an RGB cable. That's the other cable that comes from the top fan. It has like a little cap on the other side. So the signal flows that this is the signal where it comes out, and that's the connectors if you want to connect in the back of the chain. But we want to connect this header over here to the second fan's header. That's exactly the same. But now we connect it to the other side of this. Make sure that the 5 volt and 5 volt go together like that. Now these cables, I recommend you use a little bit of tape or something if you have around, because those cables are very easy to come loose. So just take a little bit of sellotape or any tape you have and just put it around this connection so that they sit together nice and tight. There we go. Now that's not going to come loose. Now the female end of the secondary fan, we're going to connect to the bottom fan's male header. There we go. Make sure that the 5 volts and grounds, they all come together like the same way. Use a little bit of tape so these connectors are not going to come loose. There we go. And the rest of the ends you can kind of forget. So now only these two need to be plugged into the motherboard. So we're going to put these on the side and we're going to install the fans on the top and back now as well. I recommend you put the front thing back over here because I think it looks much slicker. Now we're going to install this back fan over here. So this goes that way. So when I put these cables through this top corner hole over here first, because I know those cables will go there, and pull them out from the other side. And then this fan goes on the top over here. Now I am going to put this fan as low in the back orientation over here as possible, because then it's the most lined up with the CPU cooler, like the airflow wise, and the top fans aren't kind of fighting for the same air. They're very close, because the top fan will come very close on the top over here as well. So just screw this fan in as low as you can on the back over here. Now let's do the same on the top. There we go. I'll make sure that the cable ends go in the back and then come out from that hole in the middle over there. Make sure that the fan orientation is the right way, that the like sticker front fan is on the bottom, so it's exhausting from the top over there. Okay, in terms of the fan positioning on the top over here, make sure that your fans are moved as back of the case as possible, because we want the airflow to actually come in and then push the warm air out before it's actually moved out. If it's very close to there, this like front top fan is going to start pulling this cold air that the front top fan over here is pushing in, and it goes straight out. So we're going to move them as back as possible so that just the warm air from this side of the case is going to be pulled out from the case. In terms of connecting the cables together and the way we did the front fans, we're going to do the same. That this is the 1, 2, 3, and then the cables that come from the third fan over here, they will go onto motherboard on the top over there. So connect all the cables from this back fan to the second fan and then to the third fan. Time to take the power supply box out. So inside the power supply box you've got the power supply, obviously, and then a lot of cables. And the cables are the ones that I am interested in at the moment. What cables you need to take out is this one big cable. This is the unique one that has lots of pins over here. It's like a 24 pin cable. So we need this cable, take that one out. Then we need a cable that says PCIe on it, as you can see, like this over here. And you need 2 of these cables. There we go, 2 PCIe cables. Depending on the GPU you're using, my GPU has 2 8-pin plugs, so that's why I need 2 of these. But if you have maybe the RTX 3060 that has only 1 8-pin, then you only need 1 of these. Then we need a cable that says CPU on it, and you need 2 of these as well. There we go. And then finally these 2 cables that are RGB, like they're very tiny cables. You need both of these for the RGB of this power supply. Oh, did I mention that the power supply is RGB as well? The rest of the cables you can leave in there for now. So finally, it's the time to put the case down flat. Move all of these cables, just like push them around on the side, because we're gonna need to put the case flat down so that we don't want any of the cables like out of the way, okay? Gently move the case down like that. And now it's time to put the motherboard in. So basically the I/O goes in the back over here where my fingers are coming out. So what you can do is hold it from the cooler, the metal part of the side of the cooler. And then we're gonna try to lie it in this way. Okay. You're slowly gonna lift it down. Just bear in mind those little black nubbins on the bottom over here, they're standoffs, and these are gonna have to line up with the holes on the motherboard where you're gonna line them up. So just line the motherboard in and be very careful not to like move it around or scratch the backside of the motherboard when you line it down. You just line this down and try to line up with the holes on the motherboard. This hole inside there is like a nubbin, and then now you can see that the motherboard is actually lined up with those screw holes. You can see all of those screw holes. You can see like a standoff behind, so now we can screw the motherboard in. So the screws for the motherboard are inside the gray box that was inside the case that we took out from behind the case. Okay, you can't really go wrong. It's the ones that have like a little bit of a smaller thread, and there's lots of them inside. If you're not sure which screw is the right one, you know, just take one screw out and try to screw it in, and then see if it actually, you know, bites the thread. There's 8 screws to screw in. There's one screw hole just underneath this M.2 heatsink, but that is a nubbin, so it doesn't have an actually screw hole. It just like helps to guide the motherboard in place, and it holds it in. But the rest of them are screws, so screw it all in. And now we can lay the case back like that. And it's time to put the power supply cables in. First of all, we're gonna take this big fat boy over here. So these two sides over here, they are gonna go from this side. You push the cable through on that side, push it down. And then the other side of here, that goes on the top over here. You can't really go wrong. You just make sure that it's lined up the right way, so that this clip goes on that side of the motherboard, that it can lock in. Just line it up and then push in. You have to put quite a lot of pressure over here. So gently press it in, and there we go. It's clipped in. Make sure that it clips behind that little ledge over there, and then it's finally in. And then we can push the rest of the cable nicely through like that onto the other side. Next off, we're going to be taking these two connectors that are on the top corner over here of the motherboard. So for those, you need the CPU cables. Take the 2 CPU cables that you had over there. And then the side that says CPU on it over here, that side can actually split into 2. Pull them apart. Boom. Now you have 4 plus 4. And we need one of those cables that has 4 plus 4, because as you can see on top of your motherboard, there is 8 and 4. So we're gonna do the 4 first, because it might be a little bit harder to put in later. So what you want to do is push in the 4 on the top. You can pull them like further apart if you need to, like that. Makes it a little bit easier. You push this in the very corner hole over there. You can see it's coming through over there. If you have big hands, what you can do is put these cables in before you put the motherboard in, but it might be a little bit tricky to put the motherboard in, and then just line up with the 4 and boom. Okay, I got the 4 pin in. Now we're also going to take this 8 pin, and that's going to go through on the other side. Okay, I've got to admit, this part could have been done before we put the motherboard in. Would have been a much easier job, but now I'm at it. I've got small hands, so I think I'm still able to do it, but it is very tricky. Okay, I finally got it in, but I've got to admit, do it before you put the motherboard in, because it's a little bit tricky. Next up, we're going to put our power supply in, and our orientation is going to be that the fan's going to be up, so it's going to draw like a little bit hottish, warmish, not hottish really, warmish air from the case. It's going to push it down and then pull it out from here. But because our front fan over here is pushing cold air on the bottom over there as well, it's not going to be that big of a problem. So we'll take the rest of the cables that we had over here. We had the PCIe cable, 2 of those, and the RGB cables. We're going to plug them in on the side over here. So the big motherboard cable that comes from that side, that's later on going to plug in over here. But then our PCIe cables can be plugged in on the top over here. It says PCIe or CPU. So all these side ports, it doesn't matter which plug you're going to use, they're all going to work perfectly fine for that. And you can't really plug them in the wrong way. So I'm going to put my graphics card on the bottom and then the CPU on the top over there. And then this RGB cable over here, this is the same on both sides. We're going to put that on the side over here. And then on the other side, this connector we're going to put over here. Boom, it's just like a little extension so we can connect this to the motherboard. So now we're going to put the power supply inside over there, but might as well connect those like hanging cables to the power supply before we put it inside, because it's easier to do that this way. So take your CPU power cables that came from over there, and they're just gonna plug it in over here. You can't really go wrong. They only go to the like one place. And then take the big motherboard 24-pin power supply as well. It only goes to one place. It says motherboard over there. Can't plug them in the wrong place. Okay. And now they're all in. The good thing is this power supply is going to be installed like from the side like that. So it's going to go in just like that. Now let's screw it in from the back over here. But then our power supply box had these zip ties and then 4 screws as well. And they go in those holes over here. Now I'm quite excited to actually see what this RGB from the power supply is going to look like, because I've never used the RGB power supply before. Because this is actually very, very affordable and cheap, we went with this power supply. It is 80 plus bronze, and those who know about computer parts maybe a little bit more are like, whoa, 80 plus bronze, you know, that's not very efficient. But actually the truth is, if you're gonna compare this 80 plus bronze and this lower end system, there isn't that much of a price difference in terms of electricity cost. So I calculated if it was from bronze to 80 plus gold, the price difference in the UK average per year would have been about £7. So the electricity cost isn't that much higher. But if you have a little bit of more money or budget is a little bit more flexible, I would recommend 80 plus power supply that's rated 80 plus gold. Okay, the power supply has been screwed in. So let's do a little bit of a plugging in onto the motherboard, like put some cables in. So first of all, I'm taking these top fan or the exhaust fan cables over here. I'm just gonna lay them all on the top so we have a little bit of clarity. And then on one end, we're gonna need a cable that looks just like that, and then just like these two, and then we're going to plug them into the motherboard. So first of all, the RGB connector, which is this with the yellow labels over there, we're going to plug this one and then make it come out from that hole over there. And just next to the CPU fan that we plugged in over there on the motherboard, it says GDV, and there's 3 pins over there that line up with this connector over here. So this is going to go on the top over there. As you can see, it's plugged in over there, and you can't really go wrong. There is 3 prongs and they only go one way. Next off, we had these fans that were on the top and back. We're gonna make this fan cable come out from the side and then plug in onto this slot on the side over here. I'm gonna put some light over here so you can actually see what I'm doing. So that's gonna plug in from the side there to system fan 6. There we go. Plugs in on the side over there. So all of these fans now are connected to that side port over there. Now going back onto this side, we just plugged in the RGB header from the back fans over there, but because there's only 2 5-volt RGB headers on the motherboard, we're going to connect all of the RGB of all of these fans together. So we're going to take the female out from there, and then we're going to plug them 2 together, so all of the RGB from the front and to the top to the back, they're all synced up. And now all of them are plugged in. So we're going to do the cable management for that a bit later. But now the power supply, remember, had like a little RGB header coming off as well. So the power supply RGB header, what we're going to be doing is picking this out from here and then putting it on the bottom. There's a RGB header on the bottom over there. So just line it up and plug it in. Make sure you plug it into the 5-volt and not 12-volt RGB header, because otherwise you're going to fry your RGBs. So it's the left port on here that has 3 prongs sticking out rather than 4 that's next to it. Then on the back of the motherboard over here, there's lots of like black cables that come out. So take a cable that has a little bit of like yellow green, red and blue cables. And then we're gonna push this through this bottom hole in the front over here. It's like a header like that, but you can see that there's colorful cables coming in over here. And that's gonna be plugged in on the very left on the bottom corner over here. And it says audio over there. You can see that there's one pin missing over there. So line that one pin up and then you can plug it in on the bottom over there. Boom. Next off, we're gonna take out this header over here on the back of the case that has like a funny header. This is USB-C header and it's gonna be plugged in on this port over here. So you wanna chase it through over here and then plug it into this over here. Next off, we have this other big header on the back of the motherboard. And then we're gonna chase this through exactly over here as well, because that's gonna have to plug in underneath over there. So there's lots of pins over here and there's a little knob or notch on this side. Make sure that the notch lines up on that side. Just gently, you don't want to pin any of these pins. If you put too much pressure on before the pins are lined up, you can bend something. I've done it before, don't do it. Then there's lots of these small cables that come out as well. There are all these front panel like power LED and power button and switch like that. They come out from this hole over here and we're gonna need to plug them in on the bottom right corner over there. And this is the part that you always need to check with your motherboard user manual over there, and then you'll know where to plug it in. On the motherboard manual, this is page 28. So it looks something like that. And then on this diagram over here, you can see the power LED and power switch and like which prongs from that bottom they need to line up. So just follow that and then plug them in. You can see one of them says power LED plus and power LED minus. They go on the top left corner. So to that hole, so to that one, and to that one. Interestingly enough, usually Gigabyte boards come with like a thing that you can just plug them in before and then plug the whole thing into this header, but this time it wasn't included. Then power switch goes next to the top over there. And then we have a reset switch. Reset switch goes on the bottom of the power switch. There we go. Then now chase the other bits back on the other side. Gently make sure that nothing comes out. Then the front panel over here has also fan headers. So remember, this comes on the back over there. There's a big chain of other things around here. We're going to be plugging this in on the bottom over there next to the boom. It's going to be plugged in over there. And then the last things are these two cables on the back of the motherboard that says PCIe that come from the power supply. We're just going to be pushing these through these holes over here. And they're going to come out over here because they're going to be plugging in to our graphics card. Okay, just pull them out like that. In terms of cable management over here, what you basically want to do is make sure that everything's tidied up and lined up and put somewhere nice and all together. What you can do is use some of these white wires that came around the power supply cables, and then you can put loads of cables together like that. For example, all of these top fan cables, you can tie them all together so they look like one bunch, just something like that. And then also there's lots of these like little notches on the case where you can actually plug and pull the cables tight to either zip tie them in or use these white cables or any of the other ones. So just do whatever you can to make the cables like come one direction and from one place to other. Sometimes you might need to unplug something from the other side to get it underneath another cable and then plug it back. But now you know where all the cables go. Just do the cable management over here. So a little time lapse of the cable management on here. Look at that, the cable management is complete. It's pretty good because we are not using any HDDs. We have a lot more room on the bottom over there, so we can just shove some of these cables on the bottom over there. But the last thing we need to install is the GPU. And what I would recommend for this build is an RTX 3060, but I tried to get an RTX 3060 White from Zotac because they have an RTX 3060 White that would really fit into this build, and I think it's called RTX 3060 AMP, and I'll leave the link in the description below. I couldn't get Zotac to send it in time. So what we're going to be doing is using something else from Zotac that was in the Magnus 1 PC in the corner over there. So I pulled out this graphics card over there. Believe it or not, there's a full-size graphics card over there. And this is an RTX 3070. It's slightly better graphics card, but I'd still recommend you to go with RTX 3060 if you can, and get the white version of this. It looks very similar in design, but just white. So go with 3060 and white, because this might be a little bit overkill for your budget. But if you can afford, go with 3060 or 3070. It's like a good choice. But 3060 you should be able to get roughly around $800 or so on eBay or Amazon, maybe slightly more, slightly less depending on the listing. So now on the back of the case, there's these little back PCA slot covers. We're gonna need to take the second and third one, undo the screws, and then take those off. And now the graphics card is gonna go in over here. Now open up this slot on the bottom over here, push this down, take the graphics card, line it up with the slot over there. Okay, it goes in, and then just push in, boom, voila, that is completed. Now use the same screws that were there for the standoffs, and then screw the graphics card back into place. So this graphics card is nicely small enough that it doesn't take like lots of space over here, but it's still super powerful. Now use those power connectors from the PSU over here that we pushed through before, that says PCIe, and then those are the graphics card power over here. If you have a 3060, you might have only one power cable rather than two cables. If it's a little bit difficult to put in the graphics card power, you can put the graphics card power in before putting the graphics card in. It's a little bit untraditional way, but I think with this graphics card it makes a little bit sense because it's got a very deep side. It's a little bit taller than the other ones. So I'm gonna take it off and actually show you how you can plug them in before. So put this on the side. Yes. Once you've got them in, it's a little bit difficult to put them in because it's like kind of inside the casing over here, but you should still be able to do it. Push the graphics card back in, boom, it's in, and then now let's screw it in over here. What you can do is twist this power cable a little bit so you'd have them both kind of lying parallel like this. And then it looks like you've got custom sleeved cables, yet you don't. All right, so basically our system has now been completed. All the hardware is completed. Just double checking. All the fans have been plugged in over here and over there, and then on the bottom over there, okay? The power for the CPU cooler or the fan cable is over there. CPU power is on, motherboard power is on. Just double checking all the cables are in. Power switch is on, everything is on. Okay, everything seems to be working. Now, what we want to be doing is the first thing is plugging in the power kettle cable on the back of the PC over here. And then we're going to do a little test boot over here. So take it out from your PSU box. You've got it over here. Plug it in over there. Make sure that the switch over here is off. Then switch it on the back over here. Let's see if we have any lights on the motherboard. Nothing. Okay, and then I'm gonna press the button over there, and then let's see if it turns on. Okay. Aha! Now we have RGB as well. It checks CPU, DRAM, VGA. Okay, it's stuck at the moment on the red VGA, so graphics card or something like that. So I'm gonna check if it's because I've got nothing plugged in over here. So I'm just gonna restart it. Press the reset button. It goes back on the VGA, and now we're on the boot window. And then boom, let me see if we've got a boot over there. Yes, okay. We've got the post, so everything is working over here. Now, basically what we're gonna be doing is installing the software and all that part of things. So if you wanna see how we're gonna do that, then stick around for the live stream or go check out the live stream, because by the time you're watching this, it's already done. I'm sure after watching this video, you realized actually building a PC isn't that hard, and voila, look, we made it work. You can configure this to look however you want. These fans, the RGB fans, aren't necessary, but I just wanted to add this because it's such a nice case and everything's white, and the gray and white all like fits together, and they're very like affordable budget RGB fans. If you want to use them, you're gonna have a great time using them. For the price, it's fantastic. If you have any other questions, I'm gonna meet you in the comment section below. All the parts I'm talking about here and some alternatives are linked in the description below. For $1,500, this is the best PC, or in fact any laptop PC you can get for video editing. This blows anything out of the market in terms of that particular price point at this point in time in 2022. If you're wondering what are some of the other options that are going to come out later on in the year, I wouldn't worry about that, because the new tech that comes out, who knows when this is going to be available, and it's always going to have stability issues. Now the 12th gen has been out a few months and it's getting more and more stable. It's pretty stable already. I've been using this weekly over there on that PC behind me, but this is already a fantastic system over here. So thanks guys for watching. Likes if you enjoyed it, subs if you'd like to see more, and I'll see you next time.